Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. This week we're talking about our personal path in psychology. And by that I mean that we're going to discuss a bit of the values and priorities that impact a lot of the exploration we've done in previous lectures. Going into our objective, our aspiration is to explore the different approaches to the meaning of work and really consider how one's values and priorities impact career development. To do that, we're going to follow this agenda and talk about the different considerations people have when identifying a career that is a good fit for them. So first up, looking at this graph, it has a nice compilation of different components that go into a career discernment for different types of people. So we see aspects of what you love to do. Great, if you can do what you love to do, that's wonderful, right? And then what the world needs. For some of us, that's going to be a value. For some of us, that won't be. We look at what we're paid for, and then what we're good at. And so depending on what different elements are going to factor into the different careers that we pick, we might be looking at something that's a mission, a vocation, a profession, or a passion. And if we're able and lucky enough to find something that fits all of those boxes, and if that's a value and it's important to us, we'll find a purpose, right? Now this is a graph. It's not like we can actually make a theory off of this. It's not perfect, right? But it does give us a nice idea to consider that these different elements or these different values that we look at different types of roles and positions are fitting different niches within us. And we'll explore that a little bit more in a moment and talk about the difference between a vocation or a job or a career / profession. Where are the overlapping pieces? Where are the boundaries or differences? One of the very important considerations when looking at a career is, what does the day-to-day job look like? What are the expectations of me? What type of time am I committing to this job? And then what do I want back from it in return? And these values shift over time. So what we can do for now is really try to assess what we imagine we would want. We'll dive into some sort of work, and then we'll reevaluate, determine if these are good fits for us. One of the biggest pieces looking at this particular graph is that when we're at work, or we are at work, about as much as we're sleeping or taking care of ourselves. That's a big chunk of our time. And depending on the type of job that you pursue, that working space might be bigger or smaller. And depending on what our aspirations are outside of work, that may be a good thing, that may be a bad thing. But we want to look and consider, am I going into a career that's going to be very time intensive? What's the typical day look like? Is it easy to balance a family? Is that important to me? Is this something that I could switch into later on in my career? Do I have to devote a lot of time at an entry level? And then do I get to a space where I can breathe more when I've been there for maybe 5 years or 10 years? Or is it going to get progressively more competitive and more time consuming as I go on, right? Or do I get to pick my own hours? Hard for us to make all these decisions now, but good pieces to think about, especially knowing we have a career fair coming up. If you're going to be talking to recruiters for different companies, keeping an ear out for those types of conversations about what these jobs really look like and what they are going to be asking of their candidates. And the information that this graph was taken from, it has there's an article with a lot of different graphs about how Americans spend their time, and that's on our Blue Line page if that's interesting to you. Just going a little bit further, why does it matter? You may have read the readings for today, or maybe you're going to read the readings after this lecture. We do talk about positive psychology in the readings and the different types of ways that we approach work, and work engagement and its impact can really alter one's happiness both at work and outside of work. So if you're engaged and you're getting behind the work that you do, the likelihood that you can live a fulfilling career is increased, which of course, that's ideal, right? We want to feel fulfilled. One of the Cliftons who helped create the Strengths Finder that we use in the self-assessment lecture surveyed employees across the U.S. and asked questions about work engagement. Were they interested in the work that they were doing? Were they excited about it? And then they would also ask questions about personal care, contentedness, happiness, things of that nature. And those who did get behind the work that they were doing, who were excited, who looked forward to going to work, expressed that they also practiced better self-care, and they had better relationships with family because they were able to put that time and energy into those aspects of their lives. There's also an article linked on Blue Line about the nuance and effect on families, more about for those who may be concerned that if they pick a career that is very time intensive, that they'll have less time for a family. This idea that through research, quality time is more important to a child's remembrance and to a child's development than quantity time. So if perhaps a mother or a father has to be gone a lot because of work, as long as they are very intentional about the time that they do have with their child, research shows that child still has the same ability to develop successfully as a child whose parent is around more frequently. Again, if that research sounds interesting, more is on Blue Line. Going off that positive psychology article that you're reading for this week, exploring the difference between a job, a career, or a calling/vocation. A job is more of a means to an end. This would be an approach to work where you're looking to get a salary, not much more than that from the work itself. I would expect that someone who's in a job would have lower engagement because they're not necessarily invested in the type of work they're doing. They just want to be doing work, and that's completely a fine approach to take. It's something that pays the bills. Potentially they're getting a lot of their fulfillment and satisfaction then outside of that job. A career is going to have more investment. It's something that the person has good skills for, and it's something that they're interested in doing, so they would enjoy the work that they're doing, and they're going to be good at that job. We would think someone in a career would not be necessarily having a means to an end, but would have a vision of being in that role or in that industry for an amount of time and would look to increase their position within that industry over time. And then a calling or vocation, thinking back to that four-piece diagram from one of the first slides, this would be that purpose that we were talking about. It'd be the overlap of the elements from career, where it's something that you're good at, it's something that you enjoy doing, but it's also a mission or a purpose that imbues you with a feeling that this is work that should be done or that needs to be done. And we would anticipate that the engagement level in calling and vocation would be quite high. As you're thinking of your own futures, you might identify more with the job, with the career, or the calling vocation. There isn't a right or a wrong way. Partly depends on how you attach value to things, and based on those values that you have, one of these approaches to work will call out more to you. And going off that idea, as we're doing some more self-reflection, thinking about that what should I do versus who should I be? And these can influence each other quite a bit. The what should I do is the nuts and bolts of that work. And so what should I do could be working as a behavioral tech, thinking of someone maybe who's working for Boys Town. That's the nuts and bolts of what they are doing. They are working with youth who are exhibiting behavioral issues. Who should I be? That's more of how our identity plays into the work. And the who should I be can transcend different types of work. So if you're someone who you identify as always being present with whoever you're working with, so thinking to that behavior tech role, then you know what the what should I do is in that situation. You're modeling behavior for youth who are experiencing behavioral issues, but the who should I be is someone who's present and giving all of your attention to that person in that moment. You're letting them know that they are someone with dignity and that they're listened to and that they're important, right? So that could be a part of who your identity and what you're bringing into that position. You could also bring that into a different position, right? So maybe in the interim period between finding your next opportunity that's within your industry, you have an internship that's not necessarily where you thought you were going to end up, but you're trying it out. Let's say that you're an intern for the registrar. So you don't get that same ability to work within psychology, but you're still someone who is present with every client or customer or student who comes your way. So if someone does have a question pertaining to their schedule, you're present with them and recognize this is a concern for them. They're really worried they won't be able to get into that class or that a hold is preventing them from their schedule. I'm going to listen to their concerns to the best of my ability, and I'm going to show them that there's another individual who cares about their issue. So when we reflect on these questions, we see that there is considerable overlap, but also that they're two separate pieces that we can reflect on individually. And it's really interesting to see how these intersect and influence how we act in whatever roles that we pursue or that we find. So thinking then of our priorities, it's helpful to employ that positive psychology that we've referenced a few times already in lectures, focusing not on what others do poorly, but what others do successfully. We focus not on our failures, but on our successes, and we ask how we can take ourselves to the next level. It's really helpful to spend time in thoughtful reflection. Coincidentally, we have a reflection paper coming up that's due October 2nd, so we do have a rubric for you to follow so you can have some guided questions to think through the lectures from this past semester, but just in general as well, outside of this course, spending time in thoughtful reflection. Am I enjoying the work that I'm doing? Why did I pursue the opportunities that I have pursued? Are there ways that I can learn more about what I'm interested in? Can I get some hands-on experience? Things like that. It's also nice to gather a lot of different perspectives, still recognize that you have the agency to make the decisions, because when we think of others as authority figures, we might think that their opinions have more weight than our own, but ultimately we are the decision makers. But thinking about talking to faculty, talking to teachers, talking to family members, talking to friends, learning what drives them, what they're interested in, how they make their decisions, we never know when we're going to develop an aha moment, and the more perspectives we hear, the more attuned we are to the different ways that people discern their own career development. And some questions to consider when we're doing that reflection, when we're talking to people out in the world, is when have we felt most at peace? There's this idea of peak experiences where we feel like time stops moving and everything is perfect for a moment. And you can tell in the moment that you're in that it's going to be a memory that sticks with you. So that would be something like a peak experience. Can you think back to when you had one more recently, or can you think back to the types of tasks or experiences that have the most impact on you? And that ties into what brings you joy. I see now that it says what brings you joy, and I won't go change that for this video. But what are moments where you've truly felt at one with yourself? You weren't putting on a face, you weren't trying to be something you weren't, you were authentically, beautifully you. Another interesting question is, if you had to remove one activity in your current schedule, what would it be? It's hard to give up, especially I know Creighton students are so devoted, have so many things in their schedule, but spend some time and visualize yourself doing it. If you had to remove one activity, what would it be and why? And then what would it absolutely not be? That's also a way to help touch base with our values and priorities and thinking about what could we give up, what couldn't we give up. And so lastly, thinking about finding this fit, we talked about belt guides last week, and so that's certainly one way to explore, is to learn about kind of vicariously reading what different types of work experiences or job expectations look like. Talking to people in the profession, of course, that informational interview assignment that we have later on in the semester would help you here. Spending time in the field, actually getting experiences, right? Whether it be shadowing, whether it be getting a part-time job, whether it be an internship, and whether it be volunteering. But knowing what that field looks like so you can test, do I like this or not? And then be open to change. Thinking back to Crumbolt's from that career development theories lecture, life is messy. It happens, and we thought that our identity was tied to something, and we really thought that we were going to be working as a forensic psychologist, and you know what, we get in front of these offenders and it's really difficult, right? So be open to change. I mean, not saying to stop the minute it gets messy, of course not, but spend that time reflecting when there are challenges, asking yourself the tough questions, and being open to changing if it's not a good fit. All right, and we have sources here, and again, I'll post this on Blue Line if you want to take a look at these further. So last notes as we end this lecture, there is a career fair that's coming up on October 5th. It's not a requirement for the course, but I do want to keep that in your radar. I'm going to post a mini video to show you how to search for the employers that'll be present at the career fair, so you can do some research in advance. And I'll also post a slide on how to talk about yourself at a career fair. We haven't really had those lectures yet. Those are going to come post career fair, but I want you to be able to take those opportunities. So we'll have some mini optional lectures in advance of that. Please do take advantage. I would encourage especially junior seniors to attend, but also if you're sophomores looking for internships, would also be a good fit. Remember that the reflection number 1 is due next week, and we have the rubric on Blue Line, so you can have some guided questions when you're completing that assignment. As always, please let me know if you have any questions. Have a great week.